Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have Senior Fellow at the Chongyang Institute at Renmin University of China, John Ross, who's with us from London, and also we have author and researcher Greg Simons joining us from Riga, Latvia. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. John Ross in London, give us your perspective on this recent trip by the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and will it be doing any good?
Well, there's two aspects to it. One is why it's taking place, and secondly, will it do any good? Why it's taking place is clear, because the US launched trade war and conflict with China has not been successful. I mean, we can take a balance sheet of the last 3 years, for example, during the pandemic, and China's economy grew 2.5 times as fast as the US during that period. It grew 6 times as fast as the European Union, incidentally. So it's been a total failure from the point of what was the aim of the US, which was to try to stop China's economy growing, and it hasn't even succeeded in cutting trade. So really, this is a rather all-round failure on the part of the United States, and therefore that's why Yellen wants to visit Beijing, because it's been a failure. Now, will it lead to something good? That depends upon whether she's prepared to draw the lessons. China's position has not changed. China's position has been constant. It would like to have good, normal economic relations with the United States. The only country which has created a problem in this is the United States. So if the United States wishes seriously to return to good, better economic relations, China, I'm sure, will reciprocate. But this has got to be real and not just words. I mean, unfortunately, the Biden has maintained all the tariffs introduced by Trump, has introduced further sanctions on chips, etc., and therefore the words are not in line with actions. And China always judges people by their actions, not by words.
Let's cross over to Greg Simons. Give us your perspective on this trip, the issues that Mr. Ross was mentioning, why it's happening, and will any good come of this trip, or is this just another faux pas diplomacy by the United States?
I fully agree with Mr. Ross. I would go further, actually. I would say this is about two other points. And this is, if we remember what happens in 2024, you've got the presidential election. What do you have now? You have the United States, which has initiated various forms of economic, political, and even armed conflict with Russia and China. And its economy is tanking, its society is split, it's falling apart. They cannot afford to run like this. I mean, the economic situation for people in the US and Western world generally is deteriorating rapidly. And so this is a desperate attempt, and I would agree with the other speaker, this is not going to work. Who would believe the US at this moment? I mean, anyone who's had an agreement with them, verbal or written, it's been broken. I mean, they told the Soviet Union NATO would not move 1 inch forward in 1990. Look what you have the situation today in Ukraine. I mean, the JCPOA with Iran, that's broken. And with China, I mean, Obama and his Asia pivot, you've had AUKUS, you've had Quad, you've had the trade war. I mean, they're a desperate and floundering empire that is sinking, and desperate measures also become increasingly stupid. And you don't have a functioning administration. I mean, look, when Blinken came back, the first thing that Biden said, he called Xi Jinping a dictator. I mean, it's absurd, and it will not work.
John Ross, let's now focus on the Chinese side of this. China has in the past said that the U.S. should take concrete actions if it wants to improve trade ties. What does it mean by those concrete actions?
Well, the concrete actions would be very simple. The first would be to roll back the tariffs, which were introduced by Trump. This would be a real win-win. It would be good for China, but it would also be good for American households. The best estimates is that the tariffs carried out against China, the study made by Oxford Economics, which is not in the slightest bit pro-Chinese, was that full tariffs against China cost the average American family about $800 a year. In a situation in which you've got high inflation in the United States, you need this like you need a hole in the head. And therefore, it should first remove the tariffs. Secondly, this attempt to have chip wars, as it's now known, which is to impose the sanctions, is doing great damage to many international high technology companies. They don't want it because China is the largest market in the world from the point of view of chips and many aspects of ICT and technology equipment. So they don't want it. So these are the simple things that can be rolled back. If the United States is not going to do that, if they're going to say, we should all be very nice to each other and we shouldn't decouple, but we're going to continue to impose sanctions and tariffs, well, I imagine China will say, as usual, we don't want a fight. No, we didn't create this fight. We didn't pick this fight. But if you're going to hit us, then we are going to defend ourselves. And we'd prefer that you returned to a sensible win-win situation. But if you're not going to do it, we're going to continue with our policy. And we're not going to listen to words. It's good that Yellen, Blinken, and other people are going, because it's better to have at least, well, it's better. It's a step forward from silence and bad actions to having words and bad actions, but it's going to be the actions which are going to be judged, not the words.
Greg Simons, the focus of this trip has been trade, but there's so much going on between in the relations between Washington and Beijing. How can these trade differences be put aside, and how much of all of this is intertwined with the other issues, i.e. the territorial dispute that's taking place in the South China Sea, and of course the issue of Taiwan?
Well, the US tends to bundle these things together, so one becomes dependent and contingent upon the other. The US is also playing this zero-sum game, and I mean, what it's fighting for, what its ultimate geostrategy is, outcome is to retain its global hegemony. So, I mean, what it's trying to do with the trade, with this Taiwan issue, with these other different things, trying to destroy the Belt Road Initiative, etc. This is all about trying to contain and control China, make it so that it's because China is seen as the main threat and competitor to the US globally, and potentially able to challenge its role as, although China says it doesn't want it, global leadership. So the US is stuck in these old imperialistic kinds of mindset. Zero sum, they will win, and yeah, they won't. This is all about pressure, and they believe that pressure has worked in the past. But the problem is, it doesn't work now because other countries are not bowing to it because it's not in their interests. It's self-destructive.
All right, thanks a lot, gentlemen. John Ross joining us from the British capital, London, and thanks to Greg Simons speaking to us from Riga, Latvia. That's a wrap for now, but stick around. There's plenty more to come here on Press TV. See you soon.